Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. The prayer this morning will be offered by the good gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Friends, on March 16, 1802, President Jefferson founded our nation's premier service academy, the United States Military Academy at West Point, New York. So in honor of Founders Day this Sunday, today I offer the cadet prayer, and I invite you to pray with me. O God, our Father, thou searcher of human hearts, help us to draw near to thee in sincerity and truth. May our religion be filled with gladness, and may our worship of thee be natural. Strengthen and increase our admiration for honest dealing and clean thinking, and suffer not our hatred of hypocrisy and pretense ever to diminish. Encourage us in our endeavor to live above the common level of life. Make us to choose the harder right instead of the easier wrong, and never to be content with a half-truth when the whole can be won. Endow us with courage that is born of loyalty to all that is noble and worthy, that scorns to compromise with vice and injustice, and knows no fear when truth and right are in jeopardy. Guard us against flippancy and irreverence in the sacred things of life. Grant us new ties of friendship and new opportunities of service. Kindle in our hearts in fellowship with those of a cheerful countenance, and soften our hearts with sympathy for those who sorrow and suffer. Help us to maintain the honor of the Corps untarnished and unsullied, and to show forth in our lives the ideals of West Point in doing our duty to thee and to our country. All of which we ask in the name of the great friend and master of all. Amen.
Amen. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. There being 133 members present, and the House is now in session. The clerk will read the journal from the previous day.
Annapolis, Maryland, March 1st, 2025.
Recognizing the Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the journal.
So ordered. Petitions, memorials, and other papers. Report of the Committee on Environment and Transportation. Report number 11. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 225, Vehicle Laws, Exceptional Hauling Permits for Farm Products. Favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 288, Maryland Transportation Authority, Tolls, Fees, and Other Charges, Temporary Adjustments. Favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 313, Motor Vehicles, Specially Designed, Vintage Reproduction Registration Plates. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 348, Motor Vehicles, Speed Monitoring Systems, Safety Corridors. Favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 844, Somerset County Salaries of Local Officials Increase, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 967, Somerset County Code of Public Local Laws, 2025 edition, legalization, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Judiciary, report number 17. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 238, Public Safety Police Accountability, time limit for filing administrative charges, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 302, Courts, Judicial Proceedings, Statement of Charges, Human Service Workers, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 492, Frederick County, County Employees and Volunteers, Criminal History Records Check, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 610, Criminal Procedure Expungement, no finding, and case terminated without finding, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1156, Correctional Services, Maryland Parole Commission, Members and Hearing Examiners, favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If the floor leader would be available just for a few questions. The bill sponsor, good morning.
Good morning.
The bill, obviously, it's pretty clear. It adds more people to the Maryland Parole Commission and eliminates the role of hearing examiners who are like subsidiary individuals that they would assign to go over the state. And I assume the intent of that is we want full parole commissioners to hear every hearing as opposed to having been farmed out to sort of like administrative law judges. The bill also does something from my reading of it with respect to how parole commissioners are selected. Can you maybe explain what that process would be and how it differs from our current system?
So currently, the secretary is the person who appoints parole commissioners.
Right.
Right. This would set it up similarly to how we handle with judges.
That's what I thought.
Right. So we have the Judicial Nominations Commission. It would be similar. There would be a commission. They'd make a recommendation. They would provide the governor with 3 names. The governor would make that selection.
Okay. The nominating commission itself, I assume then would be a statewide body. And what I was unclear about in taking a look at it is who's going to be on that. You know, when we talk about trial court nominating commissions, it's local individuals from each county, and then we have an appellate one that is supposed to be balanced. I'm not so sure that it is. There tends to be a high tendency of individuals from one particular area, the Baltimore metropolitan area, on the appellate nominating commissions when you take a look at it. But I'm wondering, this nominating commission for parole commissioners, how will it be constructed?
So the governor would be making the determination on who would sit on that commission. And then that commission would be making the recommendations back to the governor.
Are there any requirements that, for example, individuals from like the public defender's office be on the nominating commission, or the nominating commissions for parole?
I got to get back to my notes on that.
Okay, yeah, I'm not trying to trick you. You know that. It just was a little unclear to me.
Give me a second.
If you want, Madam Speaker, I'm happy. I don't mean to intrude, but if you want to move things along, I'm happy to special order to the end of this calendar, or if you're ready.
If you could.
Yeah,
The
I'd be
special-
happy if the speaker's willing to do that just for purposes of moving things along. I'm happy to special order to the end of this calendar.
There's only one bill left on here, so.
Well,
might
then
as
I guess
get
we'll
it-
just
Get it done.
I guess we'll just go ahead then.
Okay, give me a
Thank you.
moment.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Yes, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just if the floor leader would yield for a moment, I'll go ahead and answer that question. It looks like the member of the commission is, from the panel, it will be a person from the Public Defender's Office. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, I was trying to ask what the requirements, the bill talked about the nominating commission for parole commissioners will be chosen from a group. You know, we do that many times. There has to be someone from group A, B, C, D, F. And I was trying to figure out, are we now saying that someone from the Office of Public Defender gets to be part of the selection process for the parole commissioners?
That is correct.
Okay. Is someone from the, whoever can answer, it's fine.
I'll
Is
yield
someone
back
from the
to-
State's Attorneys Association? Are they
Madam
also?
Speaker.
I'll yield back to the floor leader.
All right,
Floor
I'm
lead-
sorry.
That's
Floor
fine, sir.
leader.
I understand.
Took me a minute to get there.
Not a
We're
problem.
moving pretty quick. So the individuals would be the Executive Director of the Maryland Training and Standard Commission, the Public Defender's Office, President of the Maryland State's Attorneys, 3 service providers, the State Superintendent of Education, the President of the National Association of Social Workers, 3 members of the general public, and 1 prisoner's rights advocate.
And so that's going to be the panel who then sort of selects or screens, or the governor will ultimately select, but they will screen or vet and recommend the people for the parole commission?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1198, Correctional Services, Comprehensive Rehabilitative Pre-Release Services, Female Incarcerated Individuals, the Monica Cooper Pre-Release Act, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Environment and Transportation, report number 12. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 49, Environment, Building, Energy, Performance Standards, Compliance and Reporting, favorable with amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
As amended, this departmental bill alters existing requirements for MDE relating to the adoption of regulations that establish building energy performance standards for covered buildings. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 requires the building energy performance standards to require certain crediting exclusions and considerations, sets the alternative compliance payment rate for energy use intensity standards, allows waivers from making alternative compliance payments under certain circumstances, requires MDE to provide training to help auditors understand the requirements under the standards, and publish a list of energy auditors that have completed the training, specifies the annual reporting fee amount, authorizes MDE to certify a local
Building Energy Performance Standards Program under certain circumstances, delays certain enforcement actions until 2032, and specifies the allowable use of alternative compliance pathway payments that are deposited into the Strategic Energy Investment Fund. Move the amendments, Madam Speaker.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted.
Madam
Correct.
Speaker. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Let me finish this. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just excited to learn about the changes to the Building Energy Performance Standards. So could the floor leader rise for a question?
Floor leader?
Thank you.
Thank you. So as amended, I understand that help me understand what it does. There's an exclusion for certain buildings, I believe hospitals.
Hospitals are exempted under the bill.
Are there any other types of buildings?
That are exempted?
Yes.
There are, in the original legislation from 3 years ago, there are other categories of buildings that are exempted, such as historic buildings, manufacturing. I forget the full list, but there are a few.
Are schools and K through 12 schools, things like that?
Agriculture.
But as far as the amendment, no other buildings or types of buildings were amended in?
When you say amended in, you mean added into coverage?
To exclude it?
No categories of buildings that were added to the full exclusion besides hospitals.
Was there interest from any of the advocates when they were talking about the exclusion of any other types of buildings?
I don't believe there. Yeah, there was a request for buildings that are SCIFs that have the sensitive compartmented defense data to be excluded from the energy use intensity standards, and that was put into the bill.
Help me understand that. You say.
Hold on a second, Delegate. Let me pull up the exact language from the bill. Page 3 of the reprint, it refers to buildings that are operated as a permanent sensitive compartmented information facility. So there are buildings that deal with DoD national security information. So those are excluded from the energy use intensity part of the BEPS standards.
Okay, but we still haven't done anything for like public safety or shelter type buildings in this amendment then, correct?
No, those are not covered by this.
Can I hold the bill for tomorrow for the purpose of possible amendments?
Madam Speaker?
Committee Chair.
Great, thanks. First, let me just amplify what the Speaker Pro Tem was saying and the floor leader was saying. There are no other categorical exclusions the way there are for hospitals. However, the amendment does put in two different types of exemptions that all those buildings you named can qualify for. One of them is based on economic infeasibility. So if it would be economically infeasible to do the upgrades, then they can go through the process to get a waiver. With that said, happy to hold the bill until tomorrow. So I'd move the special order this bill to the appropriate time tomorrow, Madam Speaker.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
The question before the House is a special order, House Bill 49, into the appropriate time tomorrow. All in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 80, Land Use Transit-Oriented Development Alterations, favorable with amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Committee amendments. Alter the limitation on local land use authority. Strike alterations to the TOD Capital Grant and Revolving Loan Fund. Strike authorization to establish TOD corridor funds. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker.
Favorable report, I see you. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just had a question for the floor leader.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. I just wanted to, I guess, make a point and ask a question. I mean, I have a lot of great concern that this bill erodes local control of your locally elected officials, and that's a big concern. And to me, it appears this bill transfers power to the state away from the localities and their elected representatives. So I'll ask you in general, does this bill take local control away and give it to the state?
Thanks for the question. The committee and the subcommittee spent a lot of time delving into the nuances of that very concern. And we heard that concern, and it's been addressed. The bill as amended does not alter local control, should not be construed to alter local land use authority governing environmental or natural resources concerns, public health or safety considerations, or adequate public facilities ordinances. So the
Okay,
answer to your question is no.
So zoning would be a concern. So how does it interact when it comes to localities to control their local zoning?
So that's a great question, and I'll do my best to answer it succinctly. Local zoning is still local zoning. The bill as amended sets up a framework for localities to advance development around high-frequency rail stations to serve localities, housing, jobs, economic access needs and desires.
Okay, I guess my last question. Oh, I'm sorry if you were still going.
And if you would bear with me, be patient with me, because zoning is really complicated. So this bill does not alter local zoning authority. All that it does is it prohibits a legislative body or other local agency with land use authority from imposing limitations on mixed-use development near high-frequency rail stations. So I hope that answers the question.
Somewhat. So, well, thank you. I'll probably have some more comments on third reader, and I'll do. I'm not going to hold the bill, but I'll try to find out offline some other answers. So, thank you for that.
Thanks for the questions.
Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title?
Madam Speaker,
Yes.
thank you so much. I'd like to special order this bill until tomorrow for purposes of an amendment.
Madam Speaker,
Committee Chair?
we are happy to special order the bill to the appropriate time tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Question before the House is Special Order HB 80 until the appropriate time tomorrow. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 453, Anne Arundel County Development Impact Fees, favorable with amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 specifies that the county may grant exemptions from or credits against impact fees for construction involving moderately priced dwelling units, accessory dwelling units, workforce housing, and projects where the developer conveys land or provides infrastructure to the county. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 480, St. Mary's County Plans Public Sewerage Systems and Water Supply Systems, favorable with amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
As amended, this local bill repeals requirements and restrictions related to additional local review that must occur before St. Mary's County is authorized to adopt, revise, or amend its county water and sewerage plan for provisions in the county plan related to new or expanded public sewage systems and water supply systems. The amendment changes the sponsor to the St. Mary's County delegation. Move the amendment, Madam Speaker.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now to adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 494, Recreational Equality for Service Members Act, favorable with amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor, Leader. Vice
Thank
Chair.
you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As amended, the bill primarily clarifies or extends the availability of service member and veteran recreational benefits and privileges to certain additional service members and veterans. The bill generally establishes uniform definitions related to the military and the general provisions, natural resources, and the state government articles of the Maryland Code, primarily by the reference of definitions to the U.S. Code, while numerous alterations within the bill present only stylistic or technical changes. Amendment number 1 clarifies that veteran includes individuals eligible under federal law who serve in the public health service or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. 2 explicitly includes members of the Maryland National Guard as eligible for free entry into state parks. And 3, in making certain active and former service members eligible for complimentary licenses or license exemptions for recreational non-title fishing license or hunting license. Move the amendments, Madam Speaker.
Okay. Okay. Change my page. The question now is the question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 717, Natural Resources, Public Lands, Acquisition, Staffing, Operations, and Funding, favorable with amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As amended, the departmental bill establishes several provisions applicable to the Department of Natural Resources. 1 provision applicable to local governments relating to affiliated foundations, use of program open space, state land acquisition funding management of newly acquired real property interests, other provisions governing DNR's acquisition of real property interests, a land and property management program, and the use of program open space local funding for developmental projects. Amendment number 1 makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 strikes provisions that would have altered the state ethics law, alters provisions of law relating to the use of program open space local funding, and makes clarifying changes. Madam Speaker, move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title?
Madam Speaker.
Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I had a brief opportunity to have a conversation with the Vice Chair of the committee. I just want to check something out. Allegheny and Garrett counties, because we have such a tremendous amount of land already under state management, I believe over 100,000 acres in both counties. There's some particular project open space requirements that applied to them under the existing law. The fiscal note indicated that an unintended effect of the bill may be to limit Allegheny and Garrett counties' ability to utilize their share of project open space funds to do what we call capital renewal projects. We do buy some land, but we really, quite frankly, don't need to buy any more land unless it's really something that's going to be a playground, a ballpark. We don't need to do it just for land preservation purposes. We've got more trees than people by a very wide margin. And so the fiscal note indicated that the unintended effect of the bill would be it would limit those counties' ability to do it. Have the amendments that you discussed resolved that so that Allegheny and Garrett can continue to use their project open space money unlimited for these capital renewal facility projects.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Minority Leader. Thank you so much for letting me explain that. The fiscal note is amendment, so the amendments do take care of Allegheny and Garrett County. So as drafted, so the bill now says if you've met your requirements, then you can spend above the limits. They don't have, of course.
Right. So we won't be impeded in any way to knock it down to 20% of our funds for capital renewal. We could say, for example,
Right. It
the
got
county
rid of the
commissioners say-
20% limitation.
They could say we want to use it for all of it. We think that's the best
Absolutely.
utilize. Thank you very much. I wanted to confirm that.
You're
I appreciate
quite
it.
welcome. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the floor leader rise for a couple questions?
Vice Chair.
Thank you.
So on the bill, on Eastern Shore, we have a lot of Project Open Space, additional purchases, and just tell me what the bill does through the lens of fiscal note, and is there a part where there's a certain number of employees that come on per?
So yes, Delegate, let me start from the beginning. So the bill in general sets up a kind of like a national park service for Maryland. So it does that. Two, and getting to the provision of purchasing of acquisition of land, back in 2003, we had in abundance, we had about maybe over 300,000 acres of land. To date, we have about over 500,000 acres of land. What we haven't done in those years is kept pace with personnel for land. And so at this point, we decreased staff between those times, between 2003 and now 2025. What the Great Maryland Outdoors Act did was allow those pins to come in so that we can at least meet those 2003 levels of personnel. And so what the bill now says is as we acquire land, what we don't want to do is continue acquiring land and not necessarily having somebody manage that land. As I learned through this process, sometimes that land comes with infrastructure. So infrastructure can be roads, infrastructure can actually be property or historical property. And so what the bill does now says, if you acquire property, you have to at least hire one personnel per every 400 acres.
Okay, so how many acres, just give me an example, if this bill passed last year, how many acres did the state
So maybe
buy?
about seven, let's say, I think the fiscal note talks about 1,700 acres. So you divide that by 400, so.
And why can't the department just do this on their own from the standpoint of what's the nexus between the need for the bill?
So let's go back to the funding. And so what the bill says, it authorizes the governor when there is an influx in program open space money stateside, 80 million and above. There has to be at least 80 million. And if the department is facing a deficit, then the governor may, not shall, allow those monies to be turned over. So right now in the BRFA, there's $16.4 million that is going to go to DNR through program open space stateside. So what we're doing is codifying that. If I can do quick math for you right now we have $135 million in program open space. So according to this bill, that means that's over 80. So that's $16.4 million is going to go to DNR. Check. Right now, they say within the Board of Public Works, there's a potentially $17.1 million in potential acquisitions. You remove that, you still have a good amount of money. So I think there's a thought that because the bill is a may and that they may get the money, that somehow anything over 80 is taken. So it leaves 80 for current projects that are in the pipeline, but it allows them to, when they're having the deficits as it relates to park management, land acquisition, and land management, they can use that money to fund these.
Okay, so my last question, and it kind of goes to that may and shall.
Sure.
Like we had the other day. The question goes to, on the Eastern Shore, there might be 1,000 acres, but quite often Project Open Space from the Eastern Shore perspective is basically buying forest land. I mean, it's just there's no infrastructure. So under
So this
the bill,
doesn't affect. So this only talks about DNR. This does nothing for instance, counties that are buying land, those nonprofit organizations that buy lands and
No, this will be
easements.
Project Open Space. Like
I'm sorry.
there are examples of Project Open Space projects over the years where it's just buying forest land. It's so the question is, let's just say they buy 500 acres of forest land through Project Open Space. Does it? I heard what you said about the may to shall, but does it imply the likelihood that somebody will be hired, yet there's no real business? Yeah. So 400 acres of forest is being bought by Project Open Space. Theoretical example, but they're real in the past. The question is, would that require hiring a person just for the sake of hiring?
Delegate, we're only talking about stateside. Program Open Space stateside. Acquisitions.
Stateside.
Acquisitions.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. I'll do the rest of this offline.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I'll meet with you.
I don't have an amendment for the bill, so I'll try to get those questions answered.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll track you down.
Okay. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1155, Department of Environment, Ecological Restoration, favorable with amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
As amended, this bill defines the term ecological restoration in state law. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes language that would have required MDE to incorporate the definition in regulations. Move the amendments, Madam Speaker.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Yes.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. I have a couple of questions for the floor leader, please.
Floor leader.
Thank you.
So, ecological restoration, the definition, can you just give that definition again?
Sure. It means an activity undertaken with the goal of recovering, reestablishing, or enhancing a degraded, damaged, or destroyed ecosystem through improvements to physical, chemical, or biological characteristics or processes, returning natural or historical functions or services, or protecting or improving resiliency.
Okay. And I guess one of my questions is as we see energy technologies advance, like small modular reactors, nuclear reactors, and so forth, will this particular bill take care of all of the farms that are covered with industrial solar panels? Because clearly they're destroying the ecology and the environment.
Delegate, when you say will it take care of them, in other words,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I apologize. I can't hear you.
Yeah. Is your question, would this definition preempt solar development on farms?
No, my question is, would this bill help to restore all the damaged farms that are covered with industrial solar panels when they're removed, so that those farms can return to an environment that is actually friendly to wildlife and farming, as opposed to an industrial utility plant?
Just one second. I guess, Delegate, the answer is that it's not inconceivable that it could be helpful if there is a proposed project along those lines of what you're discussing, but there's no requirement under this definition that any funds or any projects be permitted to do that.
Would you be amenable to special ordering this for the purposes of an amendment?
Committee Chair.
Sure. Happy to special order to the appropriate time next session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Question for the House is a special order, House Bill 1155, to the appropriate time next session. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Okay. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1322, Natural Resources, Vessels, Carbon Monoxide Warning Labels, favorable with amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As amended, the bill prohibits a person from operating a gasoline-powered vessel manufactured after July 31st, 2007 on the waters of the state unless the vessel has carbon monoxide warning labels affixed in conspicuous locations in the vicinity of both the transom rear and the helm steering area of the vessel. Committee amendment establishes the manufacturer date after which the bill applies and alters the bill title. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Environment and Transportation. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 182, motor vehicle speed monitoring systems penalties, favorable with amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
The amendment alters the fine amounts. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the floor leader rise for a second?
Floor leader.
Good morning.
Morning. I actually have a ton of questions about this.
I'm ready.
So, well, I haven't organized them all yet because I just saw it. Can I special order this till tomorrow?
Madam Speaker,
Yes.
I move to special order this bill to the appropriate time next session.
Okay. Can I make a motion to lay it over then?
I'm sorry, you want it till tomorrow?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm happy to do a special order tomorrow, Madam
Okay,
Speaker.
thank
I just
you.
didn't.
That's fine.
follow up.
Thanks.
Yep. Move the special order bill to the appropriate time tomorrow, Madam Speaker.
The appropriate time tomorrow. We can't
Thank
lay
you, Madam
over.
Speaker.
Question for the House is special order House Bill 182 to the appropriate time tomorrow. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Bill has been special ordered. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 343, motor vehicle speed monitoring systems, statements, and certificates of violations, favorable with amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
The amendment defines reasonable training. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 349, Prince George's County speed monitoring systems, Maryland Route 210, favorable with amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
The amendment alters the fine amounts. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now to adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 516, motor vehicles automated enforcement programs, privacy protections, favorable with amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
The amendments authorize a law enforcement agency to access images after following specific procedures and alter the time frames in the bill. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1064, Montgomery County Planning Board and Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission open meeting live streaming requirement. Favorable with amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
As amended, this bill exempts the Montgomery County Planning Board and the WSSC from open meetings requirements to stream live or teleconference audio at a project site visit or an educational field tour if no organizational business is conducted. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1168, Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission service charges. Favorable with amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
As amended, the bill authorizes a minimum or ready-to-serve charge by the WSSC to include an infrastructure investment component and authorizes WSSC to establish customer classes within any meter size rather than the minimum or ready-to-serve charge to be based on the size of the meter on the water connection leading to the property. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report. The amendment is adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1228, Department of Commerce, Montgomery County Agricultural Reserve Study. Favorable with amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
As amended, this bill requires the Department of Commerce, in coordination with specified Montgomery County entities, to study economic development aspects of the economy of the Montgomery County Agricultural Reserve. Move the amendments.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Special order calendar number 34. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 413, Criminal Law, Control of Dangerous Substances and Firearms. Favorable report adopted.
Okay. All right, maker of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk. Amendment number 893925-1.
Amendment number 1.
Basically, this amendment will put cannabis back into the kingpin order of the code for 50 pounds and more. When we passed and said that cannabis was going to be legal, we wanted it to be a safe market, and it was going to be monitored. And unfortunately, that has not always been the case. So I spoke with our state's attorney, and I spoke with our sheriff. So what we are finding is that there is now a black market of cannabis sales that is driving a lot of violence, and we are actually losing money because it's gone into the cash market and bringing a lot of crime to a lot of jurisdictions. So for that reason, I think that we should bring it back up to the kingpin level and keeping it under that part of the code. So that's basically what I'm trying to do with this amendment.
Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I appreciate the amendment and where it's coming from, because I do believe even as we've transitioned to a legal cannabis market, we are seeing the black market and crime that occurs in tandem with that, and it is a challenge that we are working on. So I do want to acknowledge that. However, it's important for the body to understand the larger context of this bill. This bill is a very balanced omnibus bill that takes a look at a number of penalties relating to firearms and drugs, and it tries to take into account where we are today in Maryland to update those penalties. So let me just give you the fuller explanation of what's in this bill. It updates ghost guns from a misdemeanor to a felony possession. It updates guns where you've scratched the serial number off from a misdemeanor to a felony, and it updates possessing a stolen weapon from a misdemeanor to a felony, and finally it updates trafficking firearms from out of state into Maryland from a misdemeanor to a felony. Why? Because all of those firearms were procured in a manner where you have avoided our background checks. So that is one major update that is in this bill. On the other side of the coin, we took a look at some of the drug penalties in light of legalization, and you flagged what we've done here with cannabis. So under current law in Maryland, even after cannabis legalization, we have mandatory minimums. It's a 20-year mandatory minimum, up to 40 years for cannabis possession in Maryland. That is more time than you will get for attempted murder or rape in Maryland. And that is inappropriate in an era where we have legalized this. So we have changed that to be a maximum 20-year sentence, which is an appropriately long sentence, but does not contemplate a mandatory nor a sentence that is longer than a murderer, attempted murder or rape in Maryland. So for those reasons, I would ask you to stick with what we've done on this bill. The vote was bipartisan. I think it's a good bill. We've had it last year, the year before that. But again, I understand the concerns, but I do not think this amendment strikes the correct balance.
Maker of the motion.
And I appreciate your thoughts and comments on the bill. But according to my state's attorney's office, in Carroll County, when we have a drug task force investigation, drug dealers are caught with amounts ranging from approximately 5 to 10 pounds of marijuana. Now, I know 50 pounds is like the size of a sofa cushion. 5 to 10 pounds, I'm not, maybe that's a throw pillow. I'm not sure. However, those dealers only face a maximum penalty of a misdemeanor offense and 3 years of incarceration. So my concern is that while we have legalized marijuana and that's already settled, we are starting a black market of increased violence and increased crime because people are no longer going to the pot shop. They're buying it from somebody on the corner, and we are causing more and more issues. So that is the reason for this amendment, and I'm very concerned for our safety. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Go ahead and respond.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And again, I appreciate these concerns, but ultimately, the facts of the case ought to drive where the judge takes the ultimate sentence, and a maximum 20 is what's contemplated here. So again, the law has to cover a range of circumstances, and once we made the decision to make this legal, one of the problems we have is people engaging in entirely legal purchases of cannabis and revending it in their neighborhood or what have you, all the way up to people running quite sophisticated, organized crime operations. But the 50 pounds that you are referencing is in reference to a whole organization over a 90-day period. And again, portions of this could have been purchased on the legal market, portions not. And if weapons, violence, or anything were used, certainly those are going to be charged as additional crimes to this. But simply on the cannabis possession, again, we voted multiple times to say a mandatory minimum sentence is inappropriate, but the judge should have the ability to issue up to a 20-year, 2-decade prison term for that, and that seems highly appropriate.
Gentleman from Hartford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A couple of questions for the floor leader on this. So I guess my first question, we're talking about in this amendment on the bill, drug kingpins, correct?
Yes, and again, that's the I guess the leader of an operation that involved 50 pounds of cannabis over some months.
Would you mind, for the sake of the body, sharing the definition of a drug kingpin under the law?
That's it.
Well, so I mean, the definition is a little bit broader than that. Drug kingpin means an organizer, supervisor, financier, or manager who acts as a conspirator in a conspiracy to manufacture, distribute, dispense, transport, or bring into the state a controlled dangerous substance. So it's much broader than that, and it covers it's a conspirator.
Oh yes, we are leaving the mandatory for all the other drugs.
Sure, but in terms of cannabis,
this is just about cannabis.
I understand, but it's still dealing with drug kingpin, the person who's leading the drug ring, who is conspiring, doing all these other things. The reason I want to talk
about
the
problem is, and this is why I say it's different than the other drugs, but for the licensing we just did, this might have been a more interesting question, except we have a whole bunch of legal drug kingpins that are moving 50 pounds of cannabis with state-issued licenses at the moment. And that's what makes it very unusual to impose a 20-year mandatory sentence and more time for murder.
Well, the reason I want to bring this up is because it's still people operating in a legal fashion, right? And drug kingpins aren't just individuals who are selling drugs. They're the people that are going into our communities and recruiting good, innocent kids to sell drugs on their behalf, including marijuana on the black market, right? So those of you who don't know, most people here know I was a foster kid, right? But I did have a biological brother from my biological parents. What you may not know is in 2021, he died of a drug overdose in Havre de Grace. And right now, right in front of me, I have his death certificate. Cause of death, narcotics, fentanyl, morphine, and methadone, I'm sorry. He smoked marijuana, laced with these drugs, and died of an overdose. That's what happened, right? Now, fortunately, the person who sold him these drugs was recently charged and convicted. Drug kingpin, right? This isn't about marijuana. It's about the ancillary crimes that go back to people that are drug kingpins, right? And to try to say somebody who's manufacturing, distributing, recruiting kids from our community, turning good kids bad with the hope and the aspiration of easy, quick money, even if it's just marijuana, these individuals are still criminals of the highest order, right? And they're predatory on all of our communities, whether it's Baltimore City or it's my neighborhood where I grew up, Aberdeen, Maryland, where my brother passed away in 2021, Havre de Grace, Maryland. All right? So this is much broader than that. And the fact that we're going to allow not just to reduce these sentences and release and remove the mandatory minimums for these people that are predators, but we're going to allow the opportunity to go back and retroactively reduce some of these individuals' crimes. Marijuana might be the headline here, but there are ancillary crimes tied to these predatory individuals that are stirring our communities. We're not talking about the kid on the block that got caught up, selling weed, right? We're not talking about these kids. We're talking about the folks that are turning these kids into drug dealers. And that's where we're trying to cut off the head of the snake here. So with that, I support the delegate from Carroll County's amendment. And I hope, and listen, one more thing I want to say. I'm grateful that in this bill, you guys have taken pieces that we've debated for years and years and tighten up some of these gun laws, and we're going after some of these significant gun crimes. That's a great part of the bill, but with this, I think this goes too far, and for all those reasons, Madam Speaker, I support the amendment.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And this is the last thing I'll say about it, because everyone's going to have to make their own determination about how we balance criminal justice sentences in Maryland. But I think the question the delegate poses here is actually one that is making my point. We are leaving on the books a mandatory minimum sentence for a fentanyl kingpin, and we are leaving the 40-year sentence on the books for a fentanyl kingpin. I think it's highly inappropriate for a cannabis dealer to get the same sentence as a fentanyl dealer in Maryland.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
This last point, just to put a pin on his point. This drug dealer that was involved is not a fentanyl drug dealer, right? He's a marijuana drug dealer that happened to sell marijuana laced with these other drugs. So this individual wasn't seeking to sell fentanyl. He didn't want to lose my brother as a customer, but he acquired a product that was laced. So again, even drug dealers that are intending just to sell marijuana are still passing on other drugs laced with these. And so again, I support the amendment. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Maker of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to press this motion because, according to our Sheriff's Office and our State's Attorney's Office, in certain areas of the state of Maryland, there is more violence attributed to the sale of marijuana at this point than there is to heroin or fentanyl. Large quantities of marijuana are being sold to attract violence simply because it's become a cash business. So for that reason, I think it should remain in the kingpin status, and we should pass this motion. Thank you very much.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Special order calendar number 33. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 930, Public Health Abortion Grant Program Establishment, favorable report, as amended, adopted.
Okay. Maker of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have several amendments at the desk. The first is 773822/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much to be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
So every year, the Maryland legislature passes countless studies and reporting requirements for numerous areas of interest, except, it seems, when it comes to abortion reporting. The taxpayers of Maryland sink millions of dollars into the abortion industry annually, but we seem to have very few statistics on how the money is spent, whether it's women's health is actually improved, or even whether the cycle of abortion could be reversed through education. Shouldn't we know if a child is aborted due to rape or incest, if a child is aborted due to financial hardship, if a child is aborted due to lack of resources or family support, if a child is aborted to protect the health of the mother, or if a child is aborted due to fetal deformity or abnormality? How can the state of Maryland effectively direct resources to benefit women's health if we have either no data or inaccurate data? This amendment requires reporting of certain data while maintaining the privacy of the individual. The amendment requires reporting of the method of abortion used, the estimated age of the unborn at the time its life is ended, and the primary reason for the abortion. The amendment further states that any report may not include any identifiers that could be used to identify the patient or the physician. I move the amendment.
Sponsor of the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And thank you, Delegate, for giving me this amendment in advance. One thing I noticed as I was looking over this is a pretty long amendment. It's pretty long to turn around drafting of legislation that's so lengthy. And so I asked myself, how did you come up with something that's 4 pages, front and back, double or single spaced? And I did some research, and it turns out this amendment is a bill that you introduced several years ago. It looks like it's HB 1162 from 5 years ago. Do you recall what happened to the bill that year?
Yes, I do, and maybe you could explain what happened to the bill in committee.
Yeah, well, I was not on the committee in those times. But from my recollection and from my understanding of how the committee operates, this amendment died a dignified and peaceful death in a drawer. And the reason why the committee did not move on it was because it's out of alignment with the body of the will of the committee and also the will of the body. You see, we have been actively working to protect data on reproductive care for years. Probably the most recent change has been in 2022 when we had all the shielding laws. And so I would ask this body to resist this amendment and any data reporting for abortion in the future. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, go ahead.
So 47 states have mandatory reporting requirements and voluntarily report their statistics to the CDC. Maryland is not one of them. Those other 47 states don't seem to have a problem with the data that's being reported. Maryland chooses instead to spend millions of dollars in taxpayer funds while not wanting to understand the root causes of abortion, whether it be the health of the mother, genetic defects, deformities, or other abnormalities. So I press the amendment.
Thank you. So Maryland is not one of those states, and it is the will of the body not to be one of those states. If you are interested in data privacy, there's another bill moving through the committee that this amendment might be considered. But again, it has been the will of the committee and the will of the body not to move with this bill in the past, and I ask the body stay committed to the committee.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No, have it. Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title?
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
I have an amendment at the desk. It is 193224/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
This amendment requires the entity receiving the grant under the program to perform a transabdominal ultrasound, initiates a waiting period, and requests the abortion provider to estimate the gestational age of the unborn child, and offers to the pregnant woman the option to view the ultrasound image, receive a printed copy of the image, and hear the fetal heartbeat. I move the amendment.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, I would like to remind the body that this also was a bill that was introduced about a week or so ago, and it was withdrawn by the sponsor. I think it's important to note that just last November, our voters in almost every single legislative district voted to enshrine reproductive rights without condition into our Constitution. And what this bill does is introduces a condition of care. And so right off the bat, this bill is not constitutional. Secondly, even if we hadn't got that widespread support of 75% of all of Maryland's voting public supporting that constitutional amendment, this legislation that's being proposed is already against the law. Because in Health Article 20-209, it says that there can be no medically unnecessary procedure as part of care. And that's what this is. In 99% of all abortions, transvaginal ultrasounds are not required. And so this puts a cruel condition on care. It is against our Constitution, and before that, it was already against the law. So I ask this body to resist the amendment.
Madam Speaker. I do not believe that it violates the Constitution, as the amendment gives the pregnant woman the opportunity to refuse that procedure. So therefore, I would move the amendment, as 8 other states have similar options available to the pregnant woman, and 23 states have enacted the requirements of this amendment.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There's also something wrong with this amendment, the way that it's drafted. It reads, an entity that receives a grant under the program may not use the grant funds to perform or induce an abortion. The people who will be receiving these grant funds are not the people who are performing abortions. The people who will be receiving these segregated funds are nonprofits that are called abortion funds. Abortion funds are nonprofits that have been set up for several decades now because there's no federal funding that goes for non-Hyde Amendment abortions. So these funds, these nonprofits have existed for decades now. They are typically not corresponding with patients. They are certainly not the nonprofits that perform abortion procedures. And so this amendment is unconstitutional. It's already against the law. And secondly, it's drafted poorly. I encourage you to resist the amendment.
If I could ask the floor leader a question, would a nonprofit not be considered an entity?
A nonprofit is certainly considered an entity, but it's not the entity that is performing or inducing an abortion. That's where the error lies.
So we're certainly willing to clarify and amend that amendment if you're willing to accept it.
Delegate, considering that this amendment is unconstitutional, I think your efforts would be spent elsewhere.
I would respectfully disagree, and I would continue to press the amendment.
Madam Speaker.
Who got out first?
Dealer's choice. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I hear my colleague from Montgomery County's arguments, but I just want to say we pass unconstitutional stuff all the time here.
Excuse me?
I said we pass unconstitutional stuff all the time here. That's why we have many gun laws enjoined currently.
Go ahead. Go ahead, you're standing.
Madam Speaker?
Yes.
I just have a comment, and it's relevant to this issue, but it doesn't deal with constitutionality, but it deals with informed consent. And I have been corresponding with a lady out in Western Maryland, and she had 2 abortions, and she obviously is older now, cannot have children, but the bottom line is she's very, very sorry that she was not allowed to know that she could have a sonogram, and she might not have had those 2 abortions if she could hear a heartbeat. Now, I think that it's an issue of informed consent, and I had the opportunity to, a couple years ago, listen to some of the abortion debate in HGO, and there was a psychologist or psychiatrist who basically, his whole portfolio of professional help is for women that have had abortions and had buyer's remorse. And the point is that this is an issue, and we don't hear about it because we're pro-abortion in Maryland. I mean, we think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But the bottom line is that there is buyer's remorse, and there are women that are suffering because they got abortions, and now they can't have kids and everything else. So I just think we need to really think about what's going on. They're not given the full story because these guys are like, what do I want to say, like a car wash. You go in, you're going to get the abortion, or you go to the car wash, you're going to get your car washed. They're not going to do anything, tell you, oh, well, maybe you need to have a new paint job or something. So I'm just saying that I think that this is an issue, and we need to wrestle with it and be fair, because we're leaving citizens behind, citizens that are now grieving because they did what they did. So thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Assembly, for letting me at least share this information.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to remind the delegate from Hartford County about how much support for abortion there is in your district. You might not be aware of this, but 68.4% of your voters in the last general election voted to enshrine reproductive rights in the Constitution by supporting question 1. So this isn't a fringe issue. 68% is a great percentage. Passes constitutional muster, unlike this amendment.
May I make a comment to what the good delegate from Montgomery County said? The bottom line is we're harming some folks, and there's no acknowledgement for that. We're harming people, and we need to recognize that fact. And I don't care if it's 80% because of the way it was stated. The problem is people automatically don't read and don't look at the nuances and the thoughts of things, and I don't care. I really don't care, okay?
On the amendment, the question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? No sound. Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, explain my vote.
Explain your vote.
I think it's kind of ironic that we are ensuring that our children are taught about gender identity, but we can't inform a person who is pregnant for whatever reason about the perils that they can face moving forward with this. That's why I'm voting for this amendment.
Madam Speaker, to explain my vote.
Explain your vote.
I am voting against this amendment because these decisions should be made between a doctor and a patient. And as someone who has had a transvaginal ultrasound and had an ectopic pregnancy, you do not get those sounds out of your head. It was a medical emergency. And it is not the government's business about what happens to my body when I am meeting with my doctor. And we should not be legislating this stuff.
Madam Speaker, to explain my vote.
Explain your vote.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You talk about percentages, but we're talking about life, and we're talking about maternal health and decisions that are made. And we've expanded the number of places that can make these determinations. And I've talked about this before. My niece had a transvaginal ultrasound. Her baby was the size, actually smaller than the size of this bottle. She was told that she should abort the baby because of all of the potential health implications that faced him. He is 4, and he is fantastic. I'm standing for him and for the women that should have the opportunity to make the choice of life.
Clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title?
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
I have an amendment at the desk. It is 173227/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading the amendment.
So ordered.
In our discussion yesterday on the House floor, it was noted that the total amount spent on abortions by the taxpayers of Maryland is unknown. This amendment requires the Secretary to annually report to the General Assembly the total amount of taxpayer funds from all sources dispersed in the state for abortion and abortion services. I move the amendment.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Delegate, this amendment is not necessary because I can tell you right now how many taxpayer dollars go for abortion and abortion care. Perhaps there was some misunderstanding, but I'll be as clear as I can right now. There is only one place in our state budget where tax dollars go for abortion and abortion care services, and that is the state contribution to Medicaid. That is it. Those are reports that come out annually at the end of every fiscal year. They change, as you can imagine, after the Dobbs decision, they've definitely changed. And so if you would like to know, you can Google it. Googling is free. You can do that right now.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
So I guess maybe it should have been Googled the other day when you couldn't answer the question.
Stick to what you want to say.
I'm providing
okay?
a response, yes, thank you.
We can't go back and
So,
forth.
as I recall, last year, the governor provided an additional $15 million in the budget for abortion-related services. We've had various bills passed in this legislature in my tenure here, providing anywhere from $2.5 million and upwards for abortion services. And those weren't state monies from Medicare or Medicaid. They were additional fundings that were provided. I think it's a very simple request that the taxpayers know the total amount of money that they're shelling out for abortion. So I continue to press the amendment.
Delegate, your amendment says the amount of taxpayer funds from all sources dispersed in the state for abortion or abortion services. There is only one place in our budget that taxpayer dollars go for abortion or abortion services, and that is the state contribution to Medicaid. The only other part in our budget where abortion is mentioned is the abortion training program, where $3.5 million were allotted to train folks to perform these constitutionally protected procedures. Perhaps you're mixing up your funds, but that is it. It is as clear as day. And I would remind the committee and remind the chamber that these grants are coming from segregated funds from the Affordable Care Act. There are no taxpayer dollars going to create these funds. They are federally segregated to go to one exclusive purpose, and that purpose is abortion care. So we are using federally segregated funds for their intended purpose. No taxpayer money included, no increase to ratepayers.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, go ahead.
I know we continuously disagree as to whether a fee or a charge is a tax or some other term of revenue enhancement, but in my mind, any dollars collected by government is a tax. We can agree to disagree on that. So a question for the floor leader. The funds that would be expended under House Bill 930, are they Medicare or Medicaid funds?
No, they are not.
So that is the reason for the amendment. As I clarified and I stated, there are more than one source. There's more than one source of funds being used for abortion services. As House Bill 930 creates a second fund, we can disagree whether there are other funds. I think it's a very easy ask that taxpayers know the total amount that's being expended.
Delegate, I will say this in closing. If that is your intention, that is not what this amendment says. Again, you're asking about taxpayer funds for a specific purpose, abortion and abortion care services. The funds that go from these to this grant program, for a public health grant program, come from federally segregated funds that are a surplus of insurance premiums. They are not taxpayer dollars. If you have questions about the bill itself, I would refer you to the floor system, because this amendment shows that you are confused about how this works.
I would beg to differ, ma'am. I'm not confused. You disagree with me on the definition of taxpayer funds. If the government, whether it's through PPACA fees or whatever, collects $1 from me, that's a tax in my mind. So again, if you would like us to clarify the definition of taxpayer funds, I'm certainly willing to do that if you would like me to change the definition within the amendment.
I think that's unnecessary. We should reject the amendment. Thank you.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Regarding this amendment, DLS includes an analysis of the Medicaid funding for abortion in their Medicaid budget analysis every year. It has been the same for 40 years. It's been done. There's no need to legislate it. It is already being done. DLS has been doing it for 40 years. Please resist the amendment.
Yes.
We legislate current practice every year here in Annapolis. I press the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Roll call. Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Is everyone taking their vote? Clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk. Amendment number 813223/1.
Amendment number 1.
Moves to much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My amendment is a simple amendment. Famous last words, probably. On page 5 of the bill, it says the purpose of the program is to provide grants to improve access to abortion care clinical services for individuals in the state. This amendment simply changes individuals to residents. If I recall from Tuesday's discussion on the floor, it was confirmed that the grant funding is being provided through premiums, $1 per ratepayer per month at a minimum, and that is federally mandated. The money that will keep the program afloat is coming from Marylanders, and I'm asking that these services only be provided to folks who call the old line state home. The reason I believe that this is important is because we heard on Tuesday that we're not entirely sure how many abortions are happening or being provided in Maryland each year, but there are estimates of 38,000, and that has been an increase of 20% since Roe versus Wade was overturned. My question is that if the number of abortions in Maryland continue to grow at this rate, will the funding in the grant program be able to keep up? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yes, Floor Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd ask the chamber to resist this amendment. We have a lot to be proud of in our state, and one of the things we can be proud of is our incredible healthcare systems. The chamber might know that we are rated the #1 facility for anesthesiology, internal medicine. We have people traveling here from out of state for neurosurgery, pediatric care, endocrinology. And so this is not uncommon for having people cross state lines, particularly a state as small as Maryland. We're surrounded by a number of other states. But I'd like to ask the author of the amendment a couple questions. Is there any state that you know of that has this precedence?
I'm unaware.
Is there any country that has this precedence?
I do not follow other countries and their abortion policies, no.
Okay, well, luckily I do. We have a committee that's passionate about these issues as well. And I will tell the chamber, there is no policy of any state in this country, and there is no policy in any nation in the world that requires residency at the point of delivering health care. We would be setting a very, very bad precedence with this. I understand what the intention is, but unfortunately, in practice, it does not work. If we were to adopt this amendment, what would happen is if one of us were to travel to a different state, maybe you have a child who's asthmatic, they have an asthma attack, maybe there's a car accident, maybe, all of the horrible tragedies that you can think of, right? What would happen if we pass this and we set this precedent is that another state could deny our folks coverage. And so in those instances where there's an immediate need for health care, as there is in the case of abortion, it means that care could be denied In the case of, say, like a mass casualty accident, it would require EMTs to ask for identification of everyone there to ensure there's residency before delivering care. So that is not only, I think, ethically a poor choice, but also logistically puts a huge burden on our healthcare providers. And so I understand the intention of this amendment, but I would ask this body to resist it.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. According to the Baltimore Banner, as reported this past October, since the 2020 census, Maryland has had a net loss of 100,000 people to domestic migration. And the point that I'm trying to make is that if we are losing ratepayers who are paying their premiums each and every year, and at the same time we're increasing our services and more abortions are being provided, how long until this fund runs out? And then my next concern is who's picking up the tab at that point? Obviously, we've had a lengthy discussion with the delegate from Western Maryland about the funding mechanism and taxes versus fees. But my concern is if this fund runs out of money because we've got less folks contributing to the fund and more folks getting services, who's going to pay for that? And obviously our state's facing some major budget challenges. And my concern is we'll be back here next year looking for another way to fund this program. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to remind the body that these funds have been collected for the past 15 years, and they have no other purpose than going to provide abortion services. If we do not use these funds, if we do not come up with a grant program, those funds will continue to get dusty. They will go unused. And so this is a measure about fiscal responsibility, about using intended funds for their intended purpose. And before I close, I just want to uplift the names of some of the women who have died in hospital parking lots from other states because they have been refused care. I'd like to uplift the name of Amber Nicole Thurman of Georgia, Josely Barnica of Texas, Yenny Glick of Texas, and Nevaeh Crane. These are women who died because of complications of miscarriages, and they were denied care. Our state, with 76%, has chosen to be a reproductive sanctuary. That is a very good thing. We need to provide the support to not just Marylanders, but think about our broader communities. And this bill allows us to do that. And I ask for your support of this bill without the amendment.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to make sure the body is aware of a case from 2011. Because we're a reproductive sanctuary, a pair of derelict, no license anymore, physicians dilated a woman's cervix in New Jersey and then drove her into Maryland, 60 miles from where the procedure had started. And she had a horrible complication with her, I think it was a 21-week fetus. Her uterus ruptured. She had to be transferred to the hospital in Elkton and then transferred to Johns Hopkins Hospital. And those two providers have been charged in our state with murder. So that's what our sanctuary reproductive policies led to, a woman being butchered in our state.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
So everyone recorded their vote? Clerk will call the roll. There being 99 votes in the negative, the amendment fails.
Madam Speaker. Oh, never mind, go ahead. I have an amendment at the desk.
I didn't call her.
It is amendment number 763328/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
I just wanted to ask the floor leader a quick question before I get into the amendment.
Floor leader.
Thank you.
Of course. Are the providers in this grant or any healthcare providers in Maryland required to have any training on human trafficking or sex trafficking as a condition of licensure?
No, there are federally available programs where they voluntarily participate, and so those are run through the Department of Health and Human Services at the federal level. There's nothing at the state level that makes that requirement.
Okay, that's what my research told me, but I just didn't want to lead us down on a road we didn't need to go. Colleagues, this amendment is simply to add that in order to receive funding under this bill, a provider must receive training on human trafficking prevention and identification from the University of Maryland Safe Center for Human Trafficking Survivors, which is provided at no cost. Why is this important? We heard the other day that there is an increasing need for this fund as women are traveling here from out of state for needed services. And just this session, we have passed legislation that required human trafficking training for transportation workers, education in our schools, and many grants already come with conditions on training. We have regulations for hotel workers training and human trafficking recognition training for social workers and law enforcement. I want to add that there is no cost for this training, and there should be no fiscal note. I want to read, on this bill, I want to read from U.S. Representative April Delaney's testimony in support of this bill. Maryland and other states who support a comprehensive view of women's health can use these abortion earmark funds to alleviate the cost of this medical procedure to those who need it most while continuing to conform to federal law. As abortion access becomes increasingly difficult due to state bans and uncertain changes coming from the federal executive branch, I am proud that Maryland continues to be a leader in this space." Unquote. Leaders are proactive, not reactive. And leaders in organizations to prevent human trafficking recognize the importance of specialized training not only for law enforcement and social workers, but also for healthcare professionals and others who may encounter potential trafficking victims. Research shows that survivors of human trafficking often sought medical care while they were being exploited. And I want to read from GMBC here on the importance of training. According to recent studies, 88% of trafficking survivors report having some type of contact with the healthcare system while they are being trafficked. Only 6% of healthcare workers report treating a victim of trafficking at some point in their career. 71% of trafficking victims reported at least one pregnancy while being trafficked, and 21% reported 5 or more pregnancies. With training, healthcare providers are uniquely positioned to recognize the signs of trafficking, provide support, and connect survivors with resources in the community through victims' services. Now, I want to read to you, and if you do have children, this is kind of a sensitive topic, so that will be up to you if you want to stay in. I want to read to you a survivor's story. When I turned 13, I'd had enough of the abuse in home, and I ran away. I didn't know where to go, so I went to the center of town and stood by the town hall. A man saw me hanging around there, and he said that he was looking for a protege. I didn't know what it was, but it sounded fine to me. He said that I could stay at his house if I didn't have a place to stay. When we got to his house, he pulled out a bottle of gin and had me drink and drink. The next thing I remember is waking up drunk in his bed, all wet and hurt. He took me out on the street and told me what to do. During that time, I saw 10 to 20 men a day. I did what he said because he got violent when I sassed him. I took all kinds of drugs, even though I didn't really like most of them. And over the years, I had pimps and customers who hit me, punched me, kicked me, beat me, slashed me with a razor. I had forced unprotected sex and got pregnant 3 times and had 2 abortions at a clinic. Afterward, I was back out on the street again. I have so many scars all over my body and so many injuries and so many illnesses. I have hepatitis C, stomach and back pain, and a lot of psychological issue. And I have tried to commit suicide several times. That is from Kayla. Kayla's story is typical of women and girls who are trafficked for commercial sex in the United States. And experiences like this one she describes were reported by trafficking survivors who answered questions about their trafficking experiences. And her story represents not the worst that occurs in sex trafficking, but rather the common experience of women and girls who are trafficked. This is evidence that women and children who are trafficked into prostitution are physically, mentally, and emotionally devastated by this crime. And this devastation is lasting, with injuries, illnesses, and impairments continuing for decades. It illustrates how our healthcare system is failing trafficked women and children. And it makes the case that healthcare providers of all kinds are seeing trafficking victims, but failing to identify them, thereby unwittingly contributing to continuing criminal activity and exacerbating both public and private physical and mental health problems for this segment of the population who have already been so victimized. Human trafficking is a horrible crime that continues to exist in Maryland and affects all parts of the state. With 3 major airports, inexpensive bus transportation, train service along the East Coast, large sporting events, and a disposable income makes Maryland an attractive destination for traffickers. This training will teach providers under this grant to be able to identify victims of sex trafficking. There are red flag indicators. I took this training myself while I was preparing for this. And as a healthcare provider, I actually think a better bill in the future would be to require all healthcare providers to receive this training, because I found it incredibly informative. So there are all kinds of red flag indicators that they learn about. This is not anything about tracking or calculating. It is simply about training. And that is incredibly important. And supporting this amendment says that as Maryland leaders protecting women, we want more providers to be trained to help recognize victims of human trafficking. So, to be in favor of this amendment, to add the training, really is a step in, I know at this point I can't pass legislation right now. If I would have known that all healthcare providers did not have to have this training, I would have submitted the bill this session. But we can start the process with this grant. As Maryland receives so many victims that may be victims of trafficking, because they are coming to our state because of the constitutional rights that we have here, that those providers should be trained to recognize the signs. Madam Speaker, I press the amendment.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm gonna make this as brief as I can. I do think that this is a good faith amendment to get to a very significant issue, sex trafficking, and our committee has been working on this issue for many, many years. And I should be very clear when I say that though it is not a requirement of the licensing, all of the clinical education programs for nurses, doctors, social workers also include a component of recognizing violence, particularly sexual violence and coercion. And so it is a part of their educational systems and curriculum, and I would ask the body to stay with the committee and vote down this amendment.
Madam Speaker, this free training, an hour, will absolutely keep it fresh in their minds.
I don't believe I recognized you.
I'm sorry, Madam Speaker.
Okay. We're trying to move on. I heard what you said now, so okay.
All right, I press the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Is everyone out of the lounge? Clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Special order calendar number 28. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 634, Income Tax Reconciliation Program established, Maryland Fair Taxation for Justice Involved Individuals Act. Favorable report adopted.
Maker of the motion.
Madam Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk. Amendment 153823.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
This amendment would remove individuals convicted of tax-related crimes. So I guess for some context, and I do want to thank the floor leader for meeting with me and confirming that this would apply to individuals both being housed in state and federal prisons. And as I understand the bill would provide waivers for interest and penalties for folks that are currently incarcerated. And those individuals could be incarcerated for any periods between 6 months and 10 years. So again, just to recap, this is a bill that would provide interest and penalty waivers for individuals that are currently serving in state and federal prisons for periods of 6 months to 10 years. And the reason I'm asking to exclude for tax-related offenses is why on earth would we give a tax break to people that are serving prison time for failing to pay their taxes? So for those reasons, I ask this body to move this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the maker of the amendment for sharing it with me, and I appreciate the conversation we had. Colleagues, I am going to ask you to resist this amendment, and I need to explain just a couple of points. One is that if someone is sentenced to serve time for a tax-related violation, this bill would have no impact on that violation, the interest due, the penalties associated with that violation. This bill is very, very narrowly crafted to provide a potential waiver of interest and penalties for tax that is due for any taxable year during which the individual is incarcerated, for individuals who are unable to file their state income tax return while they are incarcerated. So the comptroller will develop regulations for this program and will determine eligibility that will be limited to those individuals who have a tax liability while they are incarcerated and are unable to pay it due to their incarceration. So it does not apply to anything about the violation for which they are being incarcerated. So I'd ask you all to please resist this amendment. Thank you.
Maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I just want to point out, too, because I looked into this. So as I understand it, these facilities do provide services to inmates. So they provide documents where they can file their taxes. There are various grants and programs in both state and federal prisons that enable and assist with filing their taxes. If anyone's seen the Shawshank Redemption, you can see in that movie that one of the inmates was providing tax services to his fellow inmates. So there is certainly the ability for inmates to file their taxes in jail, both in state and federal prison, and this makes sense. Why would we give special treatment to people in jail for intentionally defrauding our state, not paying their taxes, not paying federal taxes, and give them a tax break? And by the way, the last thing I'll say is this. This body aims to tax every living creature in our state except inmates. That's a problem. I ask to move this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Floor leader.
Madam Speaker, thank you. We are legislating for Maryland, not for Hollywood. And so I think it is important, again, to recognize that this is for individuals who are unable to file their taxes due to their incarceration. Yes, there are individuals who file their taxes while incarcerated, and there are people who have, due to the nature of their business, their various assets, who are not able to get the documentation they need, don't have access to the information, depending on the conditions under which they were incarcerated, may not have had a chance to get everything in order before their sentence began. And so that is why it is clearly outlined in the bill. This is for those individuals who were unable to pay their taxes due to their incarceration. And this is not for folks who are trying to defraud the government or get out of paying their taxes. This is for individuals who are re-entering our society after serving their sentence and want to do the right thing. And they want to pay their taxes, and they are coming to the comptroller's office to apply for this program so that they can pay their taxes but not be overburdened with penalties for the time that passed when they were not able to pay due to their incarceration.
Maker of the motion.
Only just to clarify, this applies to people actively serving and recently released. So it's not for people that have paid their dues to society. It's for people that are currently serving, just for clarification. But anyways, move the amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Okay. Clerk will call the roll. There being 100 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title?
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. 100% chance I do this process wrong, so patience with me, please. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
All right.
But
Amendment 7.
you got, we're on, what are you doing?
I knew I'd do it wrong. So Amendment
What
773121.
exactly are you doing?
Offering an amendment. I have an amendment at the desk, sorry. So I do this once per year.
But
So
we like to be able to get copies of them, so we know.
I gave it yesterday.
Yesterday? Read the number, please.
773121.
Amendment number 1.
So must be considered a reading of the amendment.
Thank you.
I have it now.
You know the funny. All right. So much be considered the reading of the amendment. The funny thing is, I think we came to an agreement on this one, right? Is what we talked about. So this amendment removes, it's borrowed from my friend, similar bills that my friend, the vice chair of Economic Matters, puts forward some bills like this. So this amendment removes or changes the term justice involved individuals to not include individuals who are convicted or plead guilty to a crime that are committed while the individual was holding an elected public office.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, despite a bumpy introduction, the committee welcomes this amendment. Thank you.
I promise not to do another one this year. I'll mess up next year.
Okay.
I move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Clerk will call the roll. Are there any additional amendments? Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Yes. Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. You did okay. What we got? Okay, special order calendar number 32. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 798, opioid restitution fund, interactive dashboard, favorable report as amended, adopted.
Maker of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The purpose of the special order was to seek clarification and transparency on the dashboard and how opioid restitution funds are distributed. I just want to thank the good delegate for taking the time to answer my questions and to provide clarification, and also to the HGO chair for submitting a letter on our behalf to the Department of Health to address our concerns. So I thank you. Thank you both.
Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Message from the Senate, consent calendar number 13, Senate bills introduced in the House. The clerk will read the first bill and committee assignment.
Senate Bill 49, Senator Guile, Economic Matters.
Recognizing the majority leader.
So much be considered the reading of Senate Bill 49, be considered the reading for all the bills on the calendar.
Hearing no objection, the bill is read the first time and referred to the appropriate committees. Message from the Senate, consent calendar number 14, Senate bills introduced in the House. The clerk will read the first bill and committee assignment.
Senate Bill 585, Senator Waldstreicher, Judiciary.
Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of Senate Bill 585, be considered the reading for all the bills on the calendar.
Hearing no objection, the bills are read the first time and referred to the appropriate committees. Could leadership come up now? AKA chairs and everybody. That ends the work of the desk. We had some caucus announcements.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, the House Democratic Caucus will be meeting immediately after floor in the Prince George's County Delegation Room. Thank you.
I think they can't go back. They had to go straight, right? Or down the steps.
Straight there. Don't go anywhere else. Just go straight
Okay.
there.
All right. What else we got? Yes, Republican caucus.
The Republican caucus will meet tomorrow morning at 9:15.
Okay. Committee announcements.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Appropriations Committee will vote at 2:15. 2:15.
Judiciary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House Judiciary Committee will have a subcommittee chair meeting at 1:30, followed by any subcommittee that needs to meet can start meeting at 2:15, voting session at 2:45.
Environment and Transportation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Environment and Transportation Committee will have a full committee voting session at 4 p.m. Listen up to subcommittees before that.
Ways and Means.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Ways and Means Committee will have a voting session at 3 p.m. 3 p.m. voting session, and please listen up for subcommittee announcements.
Economic Matters.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Economic Matters Committee will have subcommittee chairs meeting at 1:30. Then we'll have bill hearings at 2 and voting immediately after bill hearings. And subcommittees, if we can squeeze it in after voting.
Health and Government Operations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Health and Government Operations Committee will meet for bill hearings at 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock. Please listen to the subcommittee announcements. 3 o'clock.
Any subcommittee announcements? I don't know who got up first, but City, then you. Go ahead.
Health and Government Operations Committee will meet immediately after the Democratic caucus with a different sheriff in town, Delegate Cullison.
All righty. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Natural Resources, we are moving our time from 2 o'clock to 1:30 on Zoom, one bill. Thank you so much. Be on time.
Yes.
Public Safety Subcommittee will meet at 2:15 via Zoom, one bill. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Environment Subcommittee will meet at 2:30 today. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Housing and Real Property Subcommittee will meet at 3 o'clock today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Motor Vehicle and Transportation Subcommittee will meet at 3:30 today.
Okay. All righty. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't know about sheriff, but maybe substitute. But the Insurance and Pharmaceutical Subcommittee will be meeting at 2 o'clock on Zoom. Thank you.
All right. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Revenues Subcommittee will be meeting, it's scheduled on the website for 1 o'clock, but we're going to probably be a little bit later. We will be following the Education Subcommittee.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Business Regulations Subcommittee will meet today after the official business of the Economic Matters Committee, including voting.
Yes.
The Banking, Commercial Law, and Consumer Protection Subcommittee will meet after voting before the Business Regulations Subcommittee meeting.
Any other subcommittee? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Education Subcommittee of Ways and Means feels that they're the domino that comes after the Revenue Subcommittee and will fall after they meet, but we will be meeting, and just keep your eye on the mail for when we are actually ready to go.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Racing and Gaming will meet before Revenues and before Education. Please see alert for the Zoom meeting. Thank you.
Any other subcommittees? No. Any delegation announcements? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Anne Arundel County delegation will meet at 8:30 tomorrow morning on Zoom.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Baltimore City House delegation will not meet after the floor, and stay tuned for a new meeting time. Thank you.
Yes.
Prince George's County delegation will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. via Zoom.
Any other delegation? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Montgomery County House delegation will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And heads up for members of the Montgomery and Prince George's County delegations, a reminder that WSSC Water is having their luncheon today till 1:30.
Okay. Any other? Any caucus announcement? Okay. Any additional caucus announcement? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On behalf of the Jewish Caucus, I just wanted to remind and invite folks, both members and staff, that tomorrow morning we will be having our second annual Purim celebration. So if you have a chance, start your day with some delicious hamantash from some wonderful bakers in Montgomery County, and that will be from 9 to 10 o'clock in the Cade Room in the James Senate Office Building. Again, all members and staff are welcome to stop by and have a nosh. Thank you.
Okay. Eastern Shore.
Personal announcement. Good afternoon, colleagues. Please help me in welcoming Ruth Toomey and Matt Lieber. They're here today from tourism. In addition to Chris Wall and Lloyd Whitehead, as well as some of his staff that are here today. Chris and Lloyd are owners of Harborside Bar and Grill in West Ocean City. They owned it since 1993. In the fall of 1995, Harborside concocted the Orange Crush cocktail, and they've been crushing it ever since. Stand up. You guys stand. Demonstrations and beverages will be available in my office today, room 213. I hope that you all come by to see how the Orange Crush is made. On a closing note, I'm sure many of you have seen the bumper sticker, Virginia is for lovers. But remember, your first crush was in Maryland.
Okay. Any personal or guest announcements? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like for my colleagues to welcome Miss Celia Bowers, who is with me today as a shadow from Baltimore County. There she is. Thank you, Celia.
Yes.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like for you all to wish a happy birthday to the son of my Chief of Staff, who turns 13 years old today. Jackson, happy birthday, Jackson.
Madam Speaker?
Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I would like to remind you that next Wednesday, which is March the 19th, from 12 until 2 will be the Speaker Society reception. We are celebrating 30 years of the Speaker Society. I invite you all to come and join us because you basically are a member. And it will be held in room 170, 180 in the house, in our house building. Please see Rhonda Caldwell in room H4 downstairs for your payment. Thank you very much.
Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam
It's
Speaker.
4:45.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Folks, today we had a bunch of beautiful kids up in the galleries. So they're going to be coming around to your offices. They are from homeschoolers from all over the state. So many of your areas are represented with the Machi homeschool community. So look out. There's about 150 plus of them here today, and they're bringing you all cookies.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Permission to use delegates' names?
Permission granted.
On behalf of Delegates Corman and Warman and myself, please join me in giving a warm welcome to students from Walt Whitman High School in Bethesda. They're here in the gallery and are spending the day with us. There they are. As part of their public policy class to learn about how the General Assembly works. Unfortunately, their teacher, Mr. Kevin Oberdorfer, is sick and unable to join, but we thank him for including state politics in his class, and also want to thank Olga Sokus and Viveka Dennis, the two counselors who brought them here today. Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. and permission to use the delegate's name, please.
Permission granted.
Thank you. So every year, the Maryland State Bar Association and the Daily Record recognize an outstanding lawyer and lawyers who excel in certain community efforts. Well, this year among us is one of our own, Delegate Deborah Davis, who is recognized as a champion of justice. So,
Good. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, permission to use delegates' names?
Permission granted.
Madam Speaker, on behalf of Delegate Smith, Delegate Addison, and myself, I want to ask the body to first welcome the Johnson Square Elementary School. They have left now, but they were up in the gallery. And also, Madam Speaker, today we have the St. Francis Academy Girls Varsity State Champion Basketball team today. The lady, there they are. Madam Speaker, the Lady Panthers program is the 2025 IAAMA Conference Champions. They are a program that has alumni to include Angel McCautry, the two-time gold medalist, and Angel Reese, the WNBA star, and they continue with their success. So thank you all for welcoming them.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want everyone to give a round of applause to one of my constituents, Simone Carpenter. First year junior at the Hampton University. She is a biology major, pre-med track with plans to become a neuroscientist, just hanging out with us today, so appreciate her.
All right. Yes. You're standing.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to recognize colleagues, a constituent of Prince George's County, the dean, with Dr. Charles Adams, the dean of the Criminal Justice Department at Bowie State University, who's been working on justice reforms around the state for a number of years. Welcome him in the gallery, colleagues.
Don't see anybody else getting up, so with that, going to quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their presence? Clerk will take the call. There being 132 members present, the House is still in session. Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stands adjourned until March 13th at 5 p.m., legislative date March 3rd.